in along with Sam Monson. I'm Steve Palazzolo, and it is PFF Monday, which means the grades and stats are all coming in to Premium Stats version 2.0. What is everybody getting, Sam?
Game of the week so far, Steve. One of the games we were on our Sky TV broadcast in the UK, bringing you the Minnesota Vikings, the San Francisco 49ers, Kirk Cousins, Jimmy Garoppolo. I think that's the story from this game. But let's click in to the Minnesota Vikings offense.
I gotcha.
Nice, yeah, that's a bit of a reach problem for me there. But you can dive into every single grade on the Vikings offense so far. You can arrange them by starters, as Steve just did there. I think one of the stories coming out of this game was that Minnesota Vikings offensive line actually held its own against the 49ers defense. DeForest Buckner did have some impressive plays. On individual plays, they got beat here and there, but as a unit, they held up pretty well.
They did. That's why I like to sort by starters. You get to see those 5 starting offensive linemen, and if you go to the pass blocking grades right here, a lot of green. But I will say, we came into the season saying, hey, maybe the 49ers don't have the best pass rush group, so I like it for week 1 for Minnesota. We'll see what happens going forward. Of course, Kirk Cousins in his debut, 71.4, a couple dimes down the field, big-time throws for sure. And I like the fact, too, even when you look at receiving grades, where are they coming from? Dalvin Cook with a 90.2, David Morgan, 89.5. That is your boy there, Minnesota Vikings tight end.
Yeah, they got a couple of really nice plays individually from those guys, Dalvin Cook and David Morgan. And their overall grades suffered a little bit because their primary responsibility wasn't quite as impressive. Dalvin Cook did have some impressive carries in that game, but also the critical fumble, which really put that game in jeopardy. It was the Vikings steaming at that point. They turned the ball over. The 49ers get some success off that. That is a major negative on Dalvin Cook's overall grade. And David Morgan, after all, he's still the blocking tight end. So blocking, ironically, for Morgan was the thing he struggled at before making a couple of nice plays as a receiver.
He'll turn that around before the end of the year. Let's move on to the other side of the ball for Minnesota, and it is their defense. Again, sorting by all of their starters, and the first thing that stands out to me, Sam, is the blue with their defensive tackles. Sheldon Richardson, Linval Joseph, 89.8, 90.8. They were dominant up front for the Vikings defensive line.
At least in this game, this is Williams-Wall 2.0. This was absolute dominance inside by those pair of defensive tackles, abusing the 49ers offensive line, admittedly aided significantly by the fact that the 49ers lost guards, a lot of them. They went, I think, 4 deep at right guard at some point in this game. Mike McGlinchey, their rookie right tackle, ended up being kicked into guard, so Gary Gilliam could come and play right tackle. So that's going to help your defensive tackles have a big game. The other name to note, I think, is Danelle Hunter there. Again, it felt at times like he was destroying this game. 8 total pressures, led the Minnesota Vikings. That's a big number, but 77.9 remains in that very good but not quite elite category that Danelle Hunter seems to occupy for his entire existence.
8 pressures from him, 7 from Sheldon Richardson, another 4 from Everson Griffin. That Minnesota defensive front was legit. I think one of the interesting things here is when you start to look at the linebacker and the secondary level, though, the coverage numbers, not great. We got a bunch of 30s and 40s over there. And if you were watching the game, you saw Jimmy G missed a few throws down the field, a few big opportunities where he could have had big gains. And again, that's one of those things that shows up negatively in the coverage grading for the Minnesota Vikings, even though it might have been the quarterback's fault.
It was a really interesting game because the Vikings defense on an individual level did, I think, have the beating of the 49ers, but schematically, Kyle Shanahan was able to coax a lot of coverage busts from this unit. George Kittle was running free down the field multiple times in this game against multiple different defenders. Ben Gideon, Eric Kendricks, Anthony Barr. None of these guys seemed to be able to get a handle on where Kittle was going to escape from these formations and from these motions.
Yeah, and early on, that bootleg game was really wide open for the 49ers. Let's go. We get the other side of the ball here. Nope, we opened up an extra window there, Sam. We're just going to close that. Don't worry about it.
Smooth.
Keeping it smooth here. We've got the Niners defense, again, sorted by their starters. The story coming into the season. Do they have any edge rushers? Is it all just interior players? That seems to be what happened. No real edge presence for the 49ers in this one.
I'll tell you what else is worth looking at and remains kind of disappointing for any fan of Solomon Thomas. The story coming into this game is Solomon's going to go inside again, where he's good. His college grade as PFF was fantastic as an interior force. On the edge last season, had a pretty disastrous grade, but if they kicked him inside, the hope was we get to see the old Solomon Thomas again. it hasn't really happened. He remains on the edge, and therefore his grade remains pretty ugly. 48.4, 38.9 as a tackler, but none of these grades are good. So we saw Solomon Thomas on the edge, and he just doesn't play at his best there. That, I think, is concerning for fans of the 49ers and for Thomas.
And then if we look at early Rookie of the Year watch, have to mention Fred Warner, 88.5 game. He had that forced fumble on Dalvin Cook, 82 in coverage, did his best to salvage the game for the San Francisco 49ers. Richard Sherman ends up with a solid 70. We did see him get turned around a little bit. Maybe he's not exactly the same player, but still a solid debut for him. Can you get me up to the Niners offense here, Sam? You think you can click over there for me?
I think I can do that for you.
Let's go to the offensive summary. There we go. Let's go to the other side of the ball. Niners offense. There's our guy George Kittle sitting there with the highest grade. Could have been even higher if Jimmy G hit him on a couple other passes. Garoppolo ends up very much in the average range when we were looking through the grading. There were some plays, there were some interceptions, some bad throws that he had that looked worse on broadcast. And then after reviewing, a little bit on the receivers, a little bit not necessarily on him. So I don't think Garoppolo's numbers were as bad. He didn't play as bad as maybe the numbers would indicate. But again, offensive line here, a lot of numbers in the 40s and 50s for the San Francisco 49ers.
And that's just among the starters. You got to bear in mind, as we said, backups came in this game. They ran deep at guard, trying to patch over those injury concerns. Yeah, this offensive line generally got controlled by the Minnesota Vikings defense, and that's a big part of Jimmy Garoppolo's grade. He did miss some throws. He did force a few passes uncharacteristically, but his offensive line was pretty much getting its ass kicked in the game.
He had a great touchdown, too, that corner route up and away from coverage. So let's check out the passing map real quick. And more functionality in Premium Stats 2.0. This was where he threw that beautiful pass to Kittle. So even though he ended up 1 for 4 there, that's where he had that touchdown I was talking about, the drop pass by Kittle, a really good grade down the field and to the left. And then you get your pressure, no pressure breakdown, blitz, no blitz. The Vikings only blitzed 9 out of 38 dropbacks. And to have him under pressure on 19 dropbacks, again, just shows how dominant Minnesota was up front with their front four.
Yeah, I mean, both those numbers are related, right? If you get pressure at that kind of rate just rushing your front four, why would you ever send the blitz?
Let's check Kirk Cousins real quick. Can you click over there for me?
Do it.
So you click Minnesota, you get to Kirk Cousins, and you see his grading breakdown. Similarly, the Niners didn't blitz a whole lot, only 10 times. Here's the big difference, though. Kirk Cousins under pressure, 13 out of 43 dropbacks. A huge difference from Jimmy Garoppolo. And when Cousins did not have pressure on him, passer rating of 106.7. That was a huge, I mean, that's pretty much the difference in the game. Just a few extra pressures.
That's been his calling card throughout his NFL career. When you have been able to keep him clean, he has one of the best passer ratings in the NFL over the past 3 seasons. If I remember correctly from our pregame packets heading into this game, I think he's 3rd behind Brady and Breeze over the last 3 seasons when he's been kept clean in the pocket. So that is the story for the Vikings. If they can keep Kirk Cousins upright, if that offensive line is just okay, that's when you have a really top quality quarterback. And there were some absolute dimes deep down the field from Cousins. That pass to Stephon Diggs was like a replica of the one in the preseason.
Right on his hands with tight window.
Perfect ball location despite pretty close coverage.
So there you have it. That is the story of the 49ers and the Minnesota Vikings, the story moving forward for the Vikings. How will that offensive line play? Of course, the only way you guys can keep tabs on it is with Premium Stats 2.0, all a part of your PFF Elite package.